I think it was Apollo 16 that did this little lunar rover. But it's pretty obvious to me that when you change the speed to 1.5, that it clearly shows the rover driving around as it normally would. And at the 1 times speed that you see, it looks like it's in slow motion, and it looks like the dust is kind of staying up in the air a little longer than it should. But I always thought that was just so obvious, just to change it to 1.5 times, and then you see a vehicle driving around in the sand. And again, it weighs only 75 pounds. Some of those turns this guy is making would end you up on your back.
Okay, so yeah, I'm playing it now.
They played it back in like a slower motion, right? So it looks all moony and zero gravity, but yeah,
right.
If you play it back a little faster, you can tell that was the natural.
Are you playing it at 1.5, Bob, or regular?
I am playing it at regular.
Okay, so if you watch it regular, you'll see here that the dust looks to be suspended a little longer than it should be, and it's kind of like a slow, these slow turns. And after you watch, the first part of the video, then if you start it over again at 1.5 times speed, you'll see it's just a car driving around in the sand, and that the dust isn't staying suspended for any longer time. And some of the moves that he's making, again, if it was 75 pounds with the gravity of 1/6, think of making a turn in 1/6 gravity. I mean, what's holding your car to the road when you're making turns is the weight plus the gravity. And in this case, you would end up like this right here, where he kind of pops a wheelie and kind of skids out right here. That thing would tip over. It weighs only 75 pounds with 1/6 gravity. It would never make it. But yeah, then after you watch that, then go ahead and do it at 1.5 speed, and you'll see it just looks like a car, like a dune buggy in the sand.
Okay, here comes 1.5 speed. Yeah, and that's obviously what they did, is they just slowed everything down. But the bad thing about that is, of course, it slowed down the astronauts' arm movements, whereas you would have no resistance whatsoever. You'd have a hard time not hitting yourself in the face with your arms, flying around with no weight, and, everything would be kind of hyper accelerated from a certain perspective, but everything across the board is slowed down, which tells you that that's all NASA did, was they just simply slowed everything down.
And then, and then you look at the weight of those astronauts, what they would weigh. See, that's just a car in the sand, making moves like you would see in any sand buggy. But yeah, if you actually weighed 1/6 and had the muscle mass that you have, even with wearing a backpack, I think that they say the total weight of the backpack was 200 pounds or something. So you have a 200-pound man or 250 pounds plus the 200-pound backpack, but at 1/6 that weight, they're weighing like 50 pounds. So, I mean, they should be able to jump over the lunar rover. They should be able to jump 10 feet in the sky. There's no reason why they wouldn't. Like you said, Bob, they wouldn't have slow movement as if everything was in slow motion. That it should be very quick, that you have no resistance. You reach out to grab something, your arm would move faster. When you walk, it wouldn't be like you're floating slowly. That only happens when you're slow motion. And again, you can chalk that up to being 1969 and them not realizing or thinking it all the way through, I guess.
Yeah, that's the thing, because they could never think of everything all the way through, right? Because it's a deception. So they can do their best in they had a good budget, and maybe a decade from the time that they from the time that JFK made the announcement, but it seems like they were gearing people up for the whole space age, at least subliminally, for decades prior to any of that. But yeah, it's one of those things where you can't anticipate everything that people are going to do, especially not with this resurgence of looking at everything that NASA has ever done with more scrutiny than ever, that we're just finding more and more stuff all the time where NASA's clearly faking it. But again, it is because, they do a pretty good job with the deception, sometimes not so good either. But yeah, they can't think of everything that far ahead, so eventually they're going to get caught, just like any other liar. But instead of owning up to it, any government agency, military agency, or corporation, they're not going to own up to it. They're not going to apologize. They're going to keep lying. Just like, I don't know if you guys heard about this, but the other day I saw an article about this power plant in New Orleans called Entergy. And they were basically caught paying actors to go and basically cheerlead for the power company at a city council meeting. And they were actually turning regular, legitimate citizens away from the same city council meeting, and so they got caught. And the corporation, Entergy, instead of owning up to it or admitting it or anything, said, "Oh, well, it was our subcontractor, and we're going to fire them." So basically, yeah, we're no culpability at all. And that's just what you see with these corporations and military entities and entities like NASA, where even when you catch them lying, they just keep on lying and patch it over. It's just ridiculous that people still believe them at all. But they've got the multimedia machine on their side, I suppose.
Yeah, they do. And Jaron, I think this video actually is more realistic at 2x speed. They're just slowing it down by 50%. So when you go to double,
yeah, I thought so too.
Right. Yep. Very, very obvious stuff.